Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a really strategic look at human leverage. The ability to influence outcomes by controlling value.
Exactly. We've gathered a whole stack of sources, everything from behavioral psychology and dating studies all the way to game theory and the core philosophy of Silicon Valley billionaires.
That's quite a range.
It is. And the material gives us this fascinating, frankly uncomfortable look into how we establish value and gain influence. The main idea we're pulling out is this concept of achieving a kind of a functional monopoly.
A monopoly.
Yeah, whether that's a monopoly on affection in a relationship or a monopoly on innovation in a multi-billion-dollar market. So our mission is pretty clear. We want to understand the mechanics that govern these high-leverage relationships.
Okay, and especially looking at the difference between short-term tactics and long-term goals.
That's the key. Contrasting the tactics that create that initial desire with the goals that require a genuine partnership.
All right, let's dive in. I think a good place to start is, attraction. You always hear people say you should play hard to get. Is that just a cliche, or is there actually data behind it?
Oh, there's data. It is absolutely supported, but this is a huge but. It comes with a major caveat about timing.
Timing, okay.
Research shows playing hard to get works, but really only in that initial sort of exploratory phase of dating.
So early on.
Right. Being seen as elusive or hard to acquire, it doesn't just boost a partner's sexual desirability, it also significantly increases their concrete effort to see you again.
So we're talking about more flirting, asking for dates?
Exactly. More flirting, more compliments, a much higher likelihood of them asking you out. Basically, scarcity increases their investment.
So if you seem like a scarce resource, the other person feels like they have to raise their bid, right? They commit more time, more energy to get access to you.
Precisely. But this is where the strategy gets a little tricky. It pivots into psychology. And frankly, this is where we need to put up a big warning label.
Why is that?
Because this short-term tactic, it relies on a powerful hook called intermittent reinforcement, or IR.
Ah, right. The slot machine effect, but for people.
That is the perfect analogy. See, consistent reward teaches someone they can count on you. Consistent lack of reward teaches them to just leave.
But be in between.
But intermittent reinforcement, getting that reward sometimes, but you never know when, that is the strongest mechanism for addiction. Think about it. A slot machine that paid out every single time, you'd get bored. One that never paid out, you'd walk away.
But the maybe keeps you pulling the lever.
It keeps you pulling, desperately trying to figure out the pattern.
That is pretty heavy when you apply it to a relationship. The person isn't addicted to the stability, they're addicted to the chase.
And that's exactly why our sources point out that IR is almost always present in abusive dynamics. The person on the receiving end, the victim, they get forced into this state of withdrawal if they try to leave.
They stay because they think they can crack the code.
They're convinced if they just try a little harder or figure out the secret, they can make the reinforcement predictable again and get back some control. The uncertainty itself is the trap.
And this leads us straight into what our sources are calling the transition rule. This feels important.
It's critical. The rule is simple. Scarcity creates desire early on. So you're still in that competitive stage. But the moment you move into a committed partnership,
The rules change.
the rules have to change. Using those same tactics, being ambiguous, withdrawing, the silent treatment, it stops being a seduction tactic. It instantly becomes punishment.
And that would just erode the foundation of the relationship.
Immediately. It destroys the one resource that a long-term relationship can't survive without, which is trust.
I think that's a really crucial point for anyone listening to get. You can't keep treating your partner like an opponent you're trying to win or a resource you have to manipulate.
Right. For healthy commitment, you have to throw out that competitive playbook entirely.
Which is why, I guess, some of these standard business frameworks, like a SWOT analysis or game theory, they don't really apply to healthy intimacy.
They are fundamentally incompatible.
Wait, really? SWOT feels like the gold standard for analyzing anything. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Why would that be harmful in a relationship?
It's not the analysis itself so much. It's the assumption baked into those frameworks. Game theory and SWOT, they assume competitive dynamics by definition.
So they treat your partner like an external force to strategize against.
Exactly. Success is defined as you achieving your objectives, often in spite of your partner's interests.
So you're accidentally putting yourself in a me versus them mindset. I'm optimizing for my survival, not our shared life.
Precisely. A healthy, intimate relationship demands a total shift to positive sum thinking. It means you replace that strategic calculation with unconditional investment. The whole unit of analysis changes from me versus partner to us versus the world.
If one person is losing, the US is losing.
The whole system is losing.
Okay, so if we're throwing out the competitive strategies, what are we supposed to be creating together? What keeps desire going after that initial scarcity buzz wears off?
The data on this is, it's remarkably consistent. We looked at a large Dutch community study, and it focused on what's called dyadic sexual desire. So desire for your specific partner.
And what did they find?
Desire was positively associated with two key things: perceived intimacy and perceived partner responsiveness.
Intimacy and responsiveness, so feeling close and feeling like your partner actually sees you and gets you, that's a pretty beautiful equation.
It really is. Now, the study also confirmed what, many couples already know anecdotally. Higher age and a shorter relationship duration predicted higher initial desire.
So that initial spark does fade a bit.
It does, but the path to sustaining it is clear. You have to increase genuine connection and responsiveness.
And of course, people bring their own baggage into this. Attachment styles must play a huge role here.
Oh, a massive role. Anxious attachment, that fear of abandonment, the high need for closeness. It's positively correlated with sexual desire. It's often a drive for reassurance.
And on the flip side,
avoidant attachment is negatively correlated. Avoidance is all about pulling back from vulnerability, and since intimacy is the key to long-term desire, avoidance is like pouring a bucket of cold water on.
Okay, so this is where the idea of value creation gets really interesting to me. It's not just about what you do inside the relationship, but how you manage the world outside of it.
You're talking about relationship maintenance through inattention to alternatives.
Right, this idea of self-expansion.
Yes, it's where partners actively try to create new shared value together. Learning a new skill, traveling somewhere new, starting a project.
Creating new territory for the U.S. What does that do on a biological level?
The research here is pretty profound. They did a study where they focused on this self-expansion idea. And they found it led to significantly less neural activity in the brain regions that respond to attraction to the opposite sex.
Wow. Less than a neutral condition.
Less than neutral, and even less than a condition where people were just told to focus on feeling love for their partner.
So you're saying actively building something new together literally trains your brain to pay less attention to attractive alternatives, like a biological defense mechanism.
And a more powerful one than just consciously trying to feel loving. It locks in the partnership by reinforcing your merged interests.
But even in this positive sum game, you still need boundaries, right? How do you stop one person from just being taken advantage of?
That's the vulnerability of it, isn't it? If you throw out strategy, how do you stop being exploited?
Exactly. Doesn't a lack of strategy become its own vulnerability?
That's where boundaries come in. But they're not strategic weapons. They're self-preservation tools. You need them to avoid feeling used or neglecting your own needs.
So it's not about reacting.
No. The sources emphasize you should avoid reacting. Instead, you just clearly state your limits and assert your needs. Maybe suggest a replacement behavior.
So my needs aren't competing with our needs. I have to preserve my own energy so I can bring my best self to the relationship. And that idea, preserving non-rivalrous value, that seems like a perfect bridge to our next section.
It is. When you look at high-level strategy, the goal is always to get out of the competitive arena. When you set a boundary, you're exiting a competitive demand. And when Peter Thiel advises entrepreneurs, he's telling them to exit the competitive demands of the market.
Okay, so let's zoom out to that world of high-stakes leverage and the worldview of the anti-mimetic strategist Peter Thiel. This is all from his work, 0 to 1.
Right. Thiel's core philosophy is, it's ruthlessly simple. Avoid competition completely. Completely. True. Lasting value comes from creating something entirely new. That's the 0 to 1 innovation. If you're just doing what everyone else is doing, but a tiny bit better, you're stuck in a zero-sum war. That's the 1 to N approach.
He wants people to ask what unique thing they can create that no one else can copy. The goal isn't to be the first mover. It's to be the last mover.
The last mover. The one who captures the whole niche and enjoys those non-rivalrous profits for years. He always uses this one comparison.
The airlines and Google.
Exactly. The airline industry. Super competitive, always fighting on price. They might bring in $160 billion in revenue, but their profit margin is like 0.2%.
They just compete all the value away.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Now, compare that to Google. Maybe less initial revenue, say $50 billion, but their profit margin is huge, over 20%. And as a result, Google is worth 3 times more than every single U.S. airline combined.
Because it created a non-competitive monopoly. The value is in the non-rivalry.
It is.
But what drives that destructive rivalry we see everywhere else? What's the source of it?
Well, for Thiel, that's where the French philosopher René Girard comes in. Girard's mimetic theory is central to his whole worldview.
Mimetic theory.
It posits that human desire isn't original, it's imitative. We copy our neighbors. We don't want something because it's intrinsically valuable. We want it because we see someone else wanting it.
And as soon as two people start wanting the same scarce thing, they instantly become rivals.
Instantly. And Girard had a great phrase for this. The narcissism of small differences. We fight the hardest with the people who are most like us, who want the exact same things we do.
And Thiel saw Facebook as just a massive engine for this exact process.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He called the platform doubly mimetic. It spreads by imitation. Your friends join, so you join. And then the content itself is all about creating comparison, desire, and rivalry.
So when all that rivalry spins out of control, Girard argued there's one really dark mechanism that society uses to restore peace.
The scapegoat.
The scapegoat.
In Girard's view, this spiraling mimetic violence is stopped by redirecting all that collective hate onto one, often innocent victim. Their expulsion or sacrifice brings order back to the world. Wow.
That's a profound and pretty bleak idea, but for a strategist like Thiel, it's not a moral judgment, it's lawlessness. It's a social lever.
That's it. For him, the mechanism is viewed pragmatically. It's a source of power you have to manage or deflect. Our sources cite his analysis of Occupy Wall Street, which he called a classic scapegoating mechanism, the 99% versus the 1%.
The strategic goal is to avoid getting caught in that competitive crossfire.
And that's why he pushes so hard for human agency. He hates the idea that success is just luck. He wants definite optimism.
So instead of asking, what's going to happen to me, you should be asking,
how do I become less competitive so that I can become more successful? You're not a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
You can actually shape the future by creating non-rivalrous value.
And if that Thiel-like strategy is all about creating an irreplaceable position, avoiding conventional rivalry, that's not just for entrepreneurs. We can see this in historical figures who mastered a kind of emotional monopoly.
We can define that as strategically cultivating a singular, irreplaceable position, one that lets you leverage hidden psychological or social levers completely outside the normal competitive games.
Cleopatra is probably the ultimate example of this. She wasn't playing the Roman game at all, was she?
Not at all. She was using a completely different rule book. She inherited Egypt's incredible wealth and had to navigate the expansion of Rome. So she forms these critical alliances, first with Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony.
And it wasn't about romance.
No, it was purely strategic, to protect Egypt's independence and its wealth. She was irreplaceable. She had political authority, cultural knowledge, famously. She was the only one in her dynasty who even bothered to learn the Egyptian language.
And of course, the Roman historians just reduced her entire strategy down to her sexuality.
They tried to trap her in that zero-sum game of female rivalry, but she was always operating on that 0-to-1 level of high politics. Even her death, her suicide, was a final strategic move to maintain her own agency.
Another amazing case is Diane de Poitiers from 16th century France. She was King Henry II's mistress and advisor, and she held immense power.
She did. And she consciously stepped outside the rivalry of the royal court. The queen, Catherine de Medici, was stuck in the competitive game of producing heirs and court etiquette. Diane, on the other hand, created this unique position as the king's trusted, experienced advisor, his emotional anchor.
That reminds me of the mechanism we saw with medieval queens exercising their power.
It's a great parallel. Instead of competing directly with powerful male nobles, queens would often use religious patronage. They could award church appointments, for the manners they controlled.
So it was a non-competitive way to build their own network of loyalty.
A completely separate power structure, attracting educated men to their service.
And back to Diane for a second. There's a really shocking detail that shows how far she went to maintain her unique position.
The lengths people would go to. It's incredible. When French experts exhumed her remains in 2009, they found astonishingly high levels of gold in her hair. Gold. It confirmed the stories that she took drinkable gold for decades to preserve her youth. And it's what may have ultimately poisoned her. It just perfectly illustrates the extreme measures taken to maintain that emotional phenomenon.
So when we put this all together, competitive dating, non-competitive partnership, market leverage, What's the bottom line?
The central finding really is that long-term success, no matter the domain, it depends on exiting the zero-sum competitive game, getting out of that one-to-n approach.
And creating something unique and non-rivalrous, the 0 to 1.
Right, short-term leverage is built on scarcity and uncertainty. But real sustained value comes from certainty and shared self-expanding value. Teal's advice is pretty simple. Copy people who don't copy people.
So the challenge isn't about winning the contest. It's about figuring out what unique value you can bring to a situation, an organization, a relationship that makes competition just irrelevant.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to think about. We established that partner responsiveness is key for maintaining desire. And Teal argues that real value comes from uncovering secrets or hidden truths.
So the question is, what hidden truths, what secrets about shared vulnerability or shared desire are you and your partner avoiding? What is the thing that, if you finally unveiled it, could unlock a whole new, non-competitive stage of intimacy and growth? Think about that until the next deep dive.